Hey everyone, welcome to another exciting Zoom episode of
Brent,
And Chris.
we do what, Chris?
We talk.
That's right. Brent and Chris
Woo!
talk.
It's like we practiced.
I know. Well, we didn't. We never do. And I'm welcoming you all back from the garage, my workshop at home, because I have family in town. So you're all getting a insight in my life. Yeah, and you too, Chris. Where are you broadcasting from?
Live from the Brent and Chris studios.
I know. I'm jealous. You're in the studio. Like you get to live there and be there all the time. And you have coffee. I can just smell the coffee. What's the flavor this time?
Oh, it's the same. I only drink one flavor, and that's vanilla. The natural selection from Folgers. I buy more of that coffee than probably any human on the planet. I'll stake that. I'll stake that claim. I'm drinking 2 pots a day during quarantine. And on the weekend when Chell's home, we're at 3 pots a day.
Jeez.
Because he's there.
Okay. There's 3 humans in my home, and between all of us, we drink 12 cups a day.
The bun is only 10 cups. And I switched from my thermos, my thermos cup, I would say, insulated mug, to my Berkeley, here we go, my Berkeley coffee cup.
Ah, yes.
And it gets cold so fast, I end up throwing a lot of it away. So
okay. So you're burning some of it too.
I'm
get you.
burning some. Yeah, I'm spoiled. Life is short. I want hot coffee. Salute.
Cheers to that, brother. Although I'm not having coffee. Just saying.
Yeah.
I'm not going to advertise an alcoholic beverage, so just going to say cheers to you guys.
Last few cigars. I hope this soda's good.
You didn't make a bad face, so.
Good one?
There you go. That's it. That's regret. That's the face of regret, folks. Yep. It's lingering, Chris.
It's carbonated water, so everyone normally makes that face when they drink it anyways. I like it, but that's really flat.
Oh, yeah, when there's nothing there but like...
Yeah. I'll get rid of it.
So, hey, what are we going to talk about? Oh, wait, no, we can't go there yet. How was your week, Chris?
Gosh, I'm wrapped up in this collaboration class, and it's kicking my butt. We meet every day for like an hour to write this song for the group project. And, I mean, like, imagine trying to do anything with 3 people in the room. That's what it's like. Like, it's just...
I remember those days, undergraduate, graduate school group projects. Although graduate school, people were more mature, and we had some good groups because it was a select bunch of us that actually survived as a cohort. Yep. And so that was all enjoyable. But undergraduate was pretty much crap the whole way through.
Yeah, that's
because you're hounding people and getting them to go together, and
I like last week. It was the younger kids, and we ended up putting out a really cool Lady Gaga song. I sent that to you before we started recording, and then this week we have to write a song in the style of Chris Stapleton.
Wow,
country music, and I was like, crap, guys, I am out of my league here. I'm a pop guy. And luckily, one of the guys, bigger guy from, he's up in Pennsylvania. He's more country. And then there's a guy in Kentucky that's in our group.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So
I love the stereotype. You're from Kentucky? What do you like, boy?
I was like, I'll do the production. You guys write the song. Because I don't want to, if I do it, it'll sound like a pop song.
I burned my house down, my dog ran away.
I feel like I probably can't do this. I don't know the rules, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it anyways. There are 2 lyrics that were really fun because we're doing a country song, and one was something about she left me she left me in the grass. Now I'm a one-man person in a puff pass. I thought that was a funny line. And my favorite line, and this might be like a songwriter thing that I think it's funny, or maybe it's like a dark comedy thing that I think it's funny, but one of the guys in the group wrote, she took my mower, something about the grass. And I think that's like one of the best lines. Like I just have this guy, like this vision of this guy in my head that's so useless and so just stupid guy. Like he doesn't even know what the mower's for. He stepped over it every day. He's seen it there, and now like the girl left. She took his mower. Something
So, did she ride off into the sunset on the mower?
that could be how she got away. There's a lot, but it's work in progress. We'll get there.
That is awesome.
Yeah. How was your week?
Well, it was good overall. I'd say another solid week in the books. Work, projects. Yep, back at work. Projects. Home still. Building a place up for the kids. I have most of it done, but I will share with the audience that there remain a few select items from the. This is the tornado slide that goes on the side.
Oh, cool.
So I need to finish building that. Yeah, man, as soon as we're done with this, you've got to bring the kiddos up here. When we're allowed to gather. Yeah, man. We'll have a limited gathering where everyone comes up and the kids play together and have a good time.
And true to my form, I am just randomly building my kids a fort in the backyard. There's
nothing wrong with that. I had this discussion with Courtney because Tom's here,
right.
My father-in-law. He and I are very ambitious in our projects, and I'm sure if they watched this, they would be laughing at that. But yeah, we talked about building the castle in the backyard. That got shut down really fast because it costs. So we settled on this.
So yeah, I thought I was good to go on costs until I started looking at the slides.
Oh yeah.
The money's in the slides, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So and I'm doing a 6-foot platform. And so like a 6-foot platform, the cheapest slide I can find is like $300 just for the slide. And
wow.
if you go up to 7 foot, it jumps to like $1,000. It is not a proportionate.
That's nuts.
Yeah, get on Amazon. I've been looking, and so I think what I've decided to do is go with the 6 foot. A slide for a 5-foot deck, and that you can get for $100. And I'm just gonna build a wood platform that's a foot tall at the bottom.
That's fine. Yeah, definitely.
Meet it at the middle.
I was thinking to myself too, like you could probably build the slide.
I thought that too. When I was a kid, my uncle had built my cousin's a huge fort, and it had this massive wooden plank slide that he covered with sheet metal. I mean, this thing was like 20. I mean, I don't know. I was a kid. I was a young kid, so it seemed gigantic at the time.
Sure.
But felt like it was forever when I was a kid. And yeah, so I'm having fun. Harry keeps telling me ideas and stuff like that, and it's fun.
Dad, build it 530 feet tall.
I know. He's like, so I'm going to be able to stand up there? I'm like, yep. He's like, can I see forever? Sure, buddy.
I mean, like, theoretically, yes. But realistically, no.
No, yeah.
Yeah, man. We have 3 stories in ours. So you go up 2, and then it's like got a perch up there with a little telescope, a fake one. And
sure.
You go up there, and kids can go knock themselves out.
All railed.
So it's got that slide, and it's got 2 slides in the front.
All railed in up there?
Yeah, for sure. It's got like a big fence. I'm trying to see if any of these boxes I have left over have a picture on the side, but I don't think so. Oh, yeah, here we go. Is this amazing? On scene in the Miller house.
Dun, oh,
sort of
cool.
What we got going on.
Dude, and you got the double slides they can race.
Yeah, that, and then that with swings in the back and like a monkey bar thing in the middle with a grill. It's got like a playhouse with an awning and stuff. Yeah. These kids have everything. Like, it's no joke. Like, it's ridiculous.
What do you have to do for the base of it?
It's got these rebar stakes, for lack of a better term, that attach to the side of it, and you hammer them in the ground once you've got the location figured out.
Are they like
so it's Sorry.
Are they like a staple that holds it in place, or you go through them?
So these rebar stakes, they have a washer welded to them. So you hammer them in the ground, and then you put them in the side with a big lag bolt on the side of the structure. So the whole thing's lag bolted in from the tornado slide, the sides of it, from the cafe thing on the bottom, the little clubhouse, and then on the side where the swing is at, all of it's rebarred in. The back of it has a fireman pole you can't see. That's also staked in the ground with rebar, with staple rebar.
That's the thing. Chelsea's telling
Costco, $1,000. Best $1,000 I ever spent. Kids are already going nuts. Don't even have the last slide.
That's great, man. Yeah, that's the one thing we have to worry about, because Evelyn's not even 2.
No, you gotta be super careful there.
Right. And so it's like Harry's, like a month older than your guys, and it's like he's ready for it, but she's not. So we got to find that balance. So I'm putting a 4-foot railing around the top. So, I mean, they can't fall out of that thing. I really should find wood. They'll have to try very hard to fall out of that thing.
Yeah, kids will find a way, of course.
I know.
Evelyn's kind of like Spider-Man, right? Spider-Woman.
Insane. I swear she's more coordinated than Harry right now. And me. I mean,
Can be.
I watch her dance, and I'm like, whose child are you?
Where did you come from?
Like,
looking at the mailman, like, you go out to there, like, can you bust a move?
Yeah. I've seen myself dance. It's not pretty.
Right. I would not recommend the Chris Tap Dance School.
It's not good for anybody.
That's funny.
So, okay, what are we doing this week?
Yep, we got to get into our show. And first off, a shout out to my buddy David Hodgkiss, who hooked us up with the idea. That's right. Buddy David over there in the UK, thank you so much for the idea to talk about recycling, not just in general, but America's place in the world, and what are we doing? And I think that we're also going to take a broader context through some of the things that you're going to talk about, in your segment of this.
Completely off the rails on this one, so you're
well, that's fine, because it all is connected, and it all is important. So I think getting into the topic, and so recycling as an industry it's a crazy thing. You think it's a noble thing, definitely having a renewable cycle of resources. That makes total sense. But I think what the pitfalls that most people don't understand that kind of plague the industry, especially here in the U.S., are a lot of unknown things. And so it happened here recently. And it's interesting. But recycling is really largely driven by, like every business, by economics, right? And so you have a situation where you want to recycle, you want to do the right thing, but how do we make recycling profitable? And so what you run into is a situation where not every recyclable commodity, even though it can be recycled, it doesn't mean that it's profitable to do so. And some things obviously are going to be more profitable than others. And in looking at this, by far, it's interesting, the most profitable recyclable resource is concrete. Yeah, because you can bust it up and you can mix it up and you can reuse concrete, the basic resources of concrete, to make new concrete. And you kind of go down the line of industrial commodities, but in terms of what can be most profitably recycled in terms of household goods, it's basically paper is the top of the heap. Like most cardboards and newspaper, any kind of paper-based product can be recycled and mixed into pulp, and then fairly profitably sold on the market as recycled, paper pulp, and then be used for various products, right? After that, you get down the line to aluminum, right, and metal products, and then plastics, and the last of the line is glass. And that's the most sad thing to me, is that glass is literally so cheap to manufacture that recycling it's a loss, a net loss, no matter basically what you do to recycle glass, which is recyclable. It's so cheap to make it that it doesn't even make sense in terms of business. Like, you'd have to do it out of the kindness of your heart. And so that happened here recently in East Peoria. They're going to suspend recycling because it's not something. The fees that the recycling companies have to charge to
China
make it
stopped,
worth your while.
yeah,
Yeah,
China stopped buying
and
our
that's right.
trash.
Yeah, China stopped buying the recyclable, and basically they cut it off because they felt like they were a dumping ground. And that makes sense. They were the world's dumping ground for recyclable commodities, and there is a certain economies of scale, but there's also uh, a filthiness factor to it, right? You're taking in a lot of things that had stuff in it before, like food and chemicals and whatever else getting mixed together, and it just creates a toxic environment you have to deal with. And they didn't want shipping containers coming in doing that to them.
Right.
So you got the situation where and there's a lot to this. I could go on forever about all different kinds of things, and I kind of centered in on plastics because to me it's the biggest problem. Glass is not super biodegradable, but I mean you kind of got to pick your evils and which one you want to address because we have limited time to talk about it. So plastics is the one I centered on. It's everyone's crusade in terms of I want to limit plastics, and I do too. I want to limit the amount of plastics I put out there in the environment because even though the plastic manufacturing industry is in fact planning to expand out, through 2025, at least that I've been able to read on.
What will?
The plastic manufacturing industry.
Okay.
So there's again, not a lot to this. Basically, to break it down, there's a lot of different kinds of plastic, right? They have different number codes on the bottom of the package that you can read. And it's everything from, I have a Coke bottle here.
Sure.
This clear plastic is not the same as this red plastic up here. The clear plastic is clear. It doesn't have any color in it. And it's pliable. I can bend it with my fingers. This is not very pliable. It's very stiff. And so all those different components that make up the different parts of plastic goods are different kinds of plastic. They're not all recyclable in the same way. And that's why in the U.S. it's not profitable to recycle plastics for the most part, because when you dump them all together, as we tend to do, you have to mix it, you have to separate them. And it costs money and time and man hours to separate those products out, because if you don't, you can't just melt them all together and make one big plastic soup, because they're different. They're used for different applications, and like you can't melt that one bottle together and make a good bottle on the back end because it's got color in it one side and it's clear on the other, and it's pliable on one side and not the other. So all those different characteristics make plastics, and there's so many different combinations that basically it's impossible to very simply recycle plastics.
Question I would ask, is there any way around that moving forward? I'm going to be like Trump here and talk off the cuff. Can we inject plastic into our skin? No.
Right.
Do you think we can get to a point where we don't have to have clear bottles? Like, can it just an ugly, multicolored?
If from my limited reading, and I'm a PhD in chemical industry. No, I'll tell you what. If we all, as every industry, settled on one kind of plastic, everything's going to be opaque, white, like my milk containers. Yeah, you could recycle it as a standard. In fact, what the other countries, the most successful countries in the world, the top 5 are Germany, Austria, South Korea, Wales, and Switzerland. So Germany leads the world. They recycle 68% of the plastics in their waste.
I'm going to talk about Germany too.
Yeah, and they do it. It's complicated though. And like Japan, who has good recycling as well, they're not in the top 5. But Japan and Germany, they have a very complex recycling system. It's like a map. You can look it up online. This is where, when we're more adept at doing Zoom, I would be clicking on things and showing you a map of how other countries do this. Basically, it says something like this, like, hey, if you want to recycle plastic, look at the bottom. And if it's a type 7, for example, put it in this bin. If it's type 3, put it in this bin. Type 1, put it in this bin. And then if you have paper, put it in this bin. It's so complex because if you don't pre-recycle and make it easily sortable, it's not profitable.
Sure.
So you have to basically push the cost on the consumer in the front end and make them somehow, some way. And I know in Germany, I'm not very familiar, but I'm pretty sure there's stiff penalties if you don't do things right with recycling. And so there's a very clear incentive to do it right. Here we don't have that. So it would take a major culture shift. In fact, the U.S., if you just look at Europe as a whole, it's about 35 to 40% of their waste their plastic waste is recycled. Where in the U.S., as of 2018, was about 10%. We're not even in the top 15 in the world in recycling plastics.
Is that meaning because we're not recycling it here? Or like, you know what I mean? Do we count it?
I'm talking about just collecting, just submitting it for the potential to be recycled.
Wow. So we're like, oh, right. Like it's
right to the landfill.
Gotcha.
Yeah. In America, most of the recycling programs are modeled the same way, where it's dump it all into one bin, regardless of if it's paper, plastic, whatever. And that's the problem.
East Peoria went from the separate individual bins to buying new trucks that they didn't want people to get out of the trucks, so they switched to the one bin for all, made everyone buy new bins.
Yep, I remember this.
Canceled or suspended, I should say.
And now PDC, who is Washington's provider, wants me to drive to Pekin to a series of dumpsters to get out of my car and separate my recycling into. And it's not to say that, and I'm not doing it. If I had the time, I would. But that's just it. Like, it's so ridiculous that they literally cannot get their heads out of their whatevers in a way that they can figure out how to make it possible, feasible. I mean, if you gave me 3 bins, I'd probably figure it out. That's not that big of a deal. But when you're talking like Germany, where it's like 8 different ways, and you have to go to recycling collection sites, like, unless you offer some incentive, some reason why you're going to get your butt handed to you for not doing this, it's not going to happen. That's just all there is to it.
Here's our new business plan, okay? We file a nonprofit, and we get people to invest in, and we just pay high school kids or kids that would have paper routes to do that, pick up people's trash.
Yeah.
And take it to the dump. I mean, like,
you have to get that nonprofit has to be supported somehow. So we're gonna have to go out and get money.
Dude, got money, and East Peoria has money too. There has to be wealthy people that are like feeling the same.
There are
about the lack of recycling.
But you're gonna have to hope, and I don't disagree with that as a crusade. But in terms of practicality and applicable right now across the nation, it would take a government mandate to make it happen. And that's what happens in these other countries.
Yeah, right.
So, if I may, the challenges of recycling. The main ones are, I've already kind of alluded to this. In order to reuse, you have to know what those plastics are going to be used for in the different applications. You got to separate them. That's the major crux of all Americas. And we keep going back to America. That's going to be my focus because that's what David asked me. He said, hey, I want to talk about recycling, but also America's place in the world in terms of recycling. To me, we are a world leader, if not the world leader, in terms of, if you want to look at it whatever way, America has the largest economy, right? And so if that's the case, we create the most waste. We should be environmental stewards as the leaders and show the rest of the world how to do it. And in fact, we're the freewheeling country boys, hicks, that a lot of the world portrays us as, that don't have a clue what the hell's going on. And we're just freewheeling our way through it, building massive mountains of garbage in different communities because we have no other way to dispose of it, because we're not making that mandate. So if I may circle back, because we don't separate things out, we don't have a good recycling program for plastics. The next big challenge, it is 3 times more expensive to recycle than to produce new plastic. And that's mainly because of the U.S.'s expansion in oil production and the fact that we're pumping the market full. It's creating cheaper prices, and then it's cheaper to make the stuff. And it's always been cheaper to make it than it has been to recycle it. But especially now that America went from like a bottom dweller in terms of production for oil to the top in the world, now the market's flooded.
I'll take the second just to make sure everyone gets that connection. Plastic is made from oil.
Yes. Plastic is petroleum based.
Yeah.
100%.
I think some people don't get that. I really do.
You're right. Thank you for clarifying that. That's absolutely true. So the black crude that's pumped from the ground in different forms is converted, manufactured, and made into plastic pellets that are then mostly injection molded into different forms and make the containers we have from everything from the little, literally, I'll do a little demonstration here. From these injection molded tornado slides to the back of my kid's tractor to the little children's go slow guy and his little parts, all that was made from plastic pellets that came out of the ground.
To the kayaks, the protest.
Yeah, everything. This extension cord on my wall, like all this stuff, everything that's got plastic woven, even the things you don't think about. So like these little bungee cords, these things are made out of plastic fibers, and so it's all that stuff. It's not, it's not getting recycled. You don't even think about that. When I would just throw that in the trash, not even realize it's made of plastic, but it's not totally plastic. Yeah, it has rubber, metal on it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying your coolers behind you are plastic. I mean,
all that plastic. Like it's like a plastic. Everything, all the packaging, plastic. The radio, plastic,
and just
everything.
In a way, it's like you have your own dinosaur museum.
It's crazy. This stuff's gonna outlive the next 10 generations of humans, like for sure. The entire lawn tractor I have is made out of plastic. Hopefully. And I go ahead.
I'm just saying, hopefully they all need, hopefully they all need some good.
Hopefully they can find some way to freaking reuse all this stuff. That's just it. Like we're just counting on recycling technology to find some way to make this profitable. And that's a hope, a whim, and a prayer. It's not necessarily a sound. I've heard that the folks in the Muslim and Arab communities say that, pray to Allah, but tether your camel. Basically, it's okay to hope and pray, but you better do something practical or might be your ass. So we talked about it being more expensive to produce. The other thing, in particular in the U.S., that's a problem with recycling is that recycling supply chains in the U.S. are very disjointed. Like the recycling collectors that are processing things for, to be reprocessed into other products, they are not collaborating with industry. Like the industry is collaborating with the plastic manufacturers and the petroleum manufacturers, and to make better plastics to meet their products, right? The demands of their products, like flexible plastic that's intermolded with hard plastics, for buttons and like on the side of your phone and whatever. That's being done between manufacturers and the plastic manufacturers, not between manufacturers of product and the recyclers. And so whatever the recycling people are producing and spitting out, it's just in the form of whatever was made before. And so without that collaboration, that disjointed nature, there's no robust supply chain to bring the recyclables back into production to be repatriated and create that reusable cycle. Yeah. And they have that more so in Germany, in Japan, South Korea, Austria. These countries have done more effort in manufacturing and whatever is being produced in their countries to ensure the products there can be part of that cycle.
Yeah, it's just a tire now, but now.
Yeah, it can be this.
I don't think we have any viewers from Germany. We're good.
Hopefully not, because we're insulting them. No, in all seriousness, we're trying to do your country's justice here. But and to wrap up my small segment here, the last major point I want to make, it's what you alluded to before. We outsourced the recycling markets to China primarily, right? We sent all the garbage there for them to recycle. And that created a robust industry. They innovated. They created the ability to like recycle a lot of their own waste, right? And then they cut it off. And I think personally that was in large part to ensure that internally they could create or limit the amount of landfills they have, like recycle as much as possible internal to our own country, look out for our own people, nationalist kind of stuff, which is, that's, I think, logical in the communist government. But what did that cause? What is the underlying effect of that? What happened was that the U.S. industry has lagged. If there's no plastics being sent here, then we're not innovating. We're not creating the infrastructure to do large-scale recycling. And therefore, we just can't do it. When China cut us off, it was basically, hey, you're on your own, everybody else. So now we're left to fill the gap. And the fact is, because of the way we do it in our process, because of the way plastics are manufactured, because it's so cheap to do, to make new plastics, we don't have a good process in place to make up the slack or the industry to cope with it. And so here we are. We're just cutting off recycling programs because we don't want our citizens to pay higher fees to do it out of the kindness of their hearts, or the city to absorb the cost. So we're just cutting it off and sending it to the landfill.
I mean, the pushback I have for cities is I was never offered to pay. I never had.
No, they make a decision for you, Chris. That's what happened here. People bitched about the fact that they were not recycling the same stuff. Like right now, I can only recycle certain kinds of plastics and paper goods. I can't put any glass in there. And it's because the glass is not profitable at all. And somebody, and this was the discussion, the city council, I watched it in Washington. The people literally said as a response, you elected us to make the decisions for you as a group, and we did that. And that's what happened. You were never offered an option because they felt that it was better for the community as a whole to not offer that solution and just make a decision for you. That's what elections of people get you.
That's why I want to run for one of those things.
You should. Then you'll have some power.
I didn't want the power. I just want common sense in there.
But you need power to make things happen. And it's not how you wield the power, whether it be for your own good or for the good of your community. That's the determining factor on whether or not it's done right.
Yeah. I always feel like there's this. I remember history classes. I've taken so many history classes, and they talked about the code of Hammurabi.
Oh yeah.
The first
honor codes.
Huh?
Honor codes.
Well, it was like the first time that the city actually wrote down the laws where everyone could see them, and it was, public. People knew what would happen if you stole bread. And it was like the first time they did that. We've gotten so far away from that now, and it feels just like it feels like the governments are afraid to have just regular conversations with the people and say, look, we can do it if this many people are willing to pay for it, but if not, we can't do it.
And that's where you lose democracy. You have that fine line between I'm in this role to make decisions for you, and we got to put this to the people. There's no defining factor there. It's whoever's in charge gets to make that decision, really. And if you don't like it, you got to vote them out.
Yeah, and that's just how that's just where I don't understand why the cities aren't doing it. It appeases everyone. Hey, we offered it to the city. Not enough people were interested. Couldn't do it. But instead, they just take the hit. Like, they don't even care. Like, that makes no sense to me. I mean, politically, it probably doesn't cost them anything, and so they're not.
But that's just it. When you're elected, you make political calculations.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
But
that's the determining.
Like a softball one. Give it to the people. Hey, guys. Whack.
Nope.
I know.
It's all hardball. You made the point there with your analogy. It's all hardball. They're all throwing 104-mile-an-hour fastballs, and if you can't hit that sucker, you're toast.
And maybe it's the whole give an inch, they take a mile thing.
Well, I mean,
first they're recycling. Now they want to have parties in the streets.
I guarantee you, there's those conversations in jest or whatever. But at the end of the day, you feel like, well, they elected me. I'm supposed to be making these decisions. You know what I mean? Like, you sort of set the boundaries for yourself. It's sort of like what Trump has done with his presidency. Like, he literally has pushed the boundaries from the start with not divesting his business interests, right? And then to everything else with being just very blatant with all of his activities. He's like, I'm stacking the courts, and that's what I want to do, and too bad if you don't like it. That's what's happened. McConnell's the same way. Pelosi's the same way. All politicians run that gamut of, I'm elected, I should be, in charge.
That's where I do
Yep.
understand that's where I understand some Democrats that push for her to go.
Yeah, you know what? I won't dispute with you. A changing of the guard has to happen at some point, and most of the time, the old guard hangs on longer than they should.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, their incumbency is not challenged by the overall party or group, whatever you want to call them, because people don't like change and they don't want to deal with the consequences of it. What's going to happen if we get somebody new? They get freaked out. And regardless of your stance on change and Democrats, Republicans, whatever else, they all have a vested interest to remain in power as long as they can because it's good for them.
I feel that I don't mean this bad because I really like Dr. Fauci, but I got that vibe from Dr. Fauci at first.
Well, he's been around the block forever, and there's a certain amount of confidence that can be misconstrued as arrogance and or entitlement.
Yeah.
And I just feel like he's probably just a lot of people who are doing the right thing for the right reasons, at least from my own standpoint. It may not be right, but I feel like they just get tired of the BS and they just want to kind of work their way through things and say it like it is. And I feel like he's that kind of guy. Like he's as close as he can be as a scientist type person. He's trying to just cut through all the crap and just give it to you like it is because he may be thinking, I could drop dead tomorrow. I gotta just get it out there because this other joker that's about to come up here, who's plastered in orange paint on his face and fake hair and this, that, and the other is gonna come up here and just lie, and I gotta try to keep a straight face because I'm on the same stage. I feel like he's trying to just get it out there as fast as he can to try to avoid the media storm.
And Trump's people are the ones that are threatening his life and stuff. It's Trump.
Of course they are. Of course they are. Saying you ought to be protesting, open us up, and fuck the coronavirus, we'll die on our feet rather than our knees. This kind of mentality,
Yes. I'm sorry. We got to do this conversation real quick. Like that is the one thing. The lady I ran out to the shop today to sew up some masks since we got to start wearing them. And
yeah.
And
I have to start tomorrow.
Oh yeah. I made mine. I was gonna bring it down and show everybody. I made mine. Pretty proud. The lady came over from the shop. She runs a yoga studio. She's like, I'm closing up. I had a month-to-month leash and I'm out of here. This is the dumbest thing ever. They should have just quarantined the sick people. And instead, it's not quarantine when you lock down everybody. That's martial.
Right. They start talking about,
I'm like, that's not even what martial law is. Like, it's just fundamentally not. And
remember your source, Chris.
This is the thing I want to encourage people. If you're having issues with it, or if you're having problems thinking big enough, I'll just put this. Let's use the cancer center for it. I think that the cancer center is a great thing to go with. Or let's use a nursing home. Nursing homes are fine too. So we don't quarantine anybody, but the people at the nursing homes are the immunocompromised. But what about the people who take care of them?
Yep.
And then, so what about when they go to the store and they get it? And
it's a spreading effect. All it takes is that one nurse to go to the grocery store. She's grabbing a box of Cheerios. The guy next to her sneezes into his shoulder, whatever, and the droplets get on her. She breathes them in. She goes home. She's asymptomatic. Goes to your grandmother and feeds her the next day.
Yes.
That's it.
And that nurse is probably going to be fine, but grandma's got a 10% chance that she won't make it
And that's right. Mortality rates. And that person's taking care of how many people who are immunocompromised.
And here's the other biggest pushback. I really want to get out there because I hear nobody saying it. And who the hell am I to be thinking like this and not hear it on the news? But they're going to do way more testing for this, right? That's what's going to happen. And what's going to happen is the mortality rate's going to go down.
Well, I had this argument with my colleagues. Yes, it will probably go down overall, but both buckets will grow. The amount of people who died from it and the amount of people who have it are both going to go up.
But the amount of testing that goes up doesn't do anything but change the mortality rate.
It will change the mortality rate, but it will be in both directions.
No. It can only go in one direction.
How so?
We're catching all the dead people as it is.
Not necessarily. No, because of what they were talking about initial cases, a lot of the initial mortalities they were thinking that were happening were people were just dying suddenly and they didn't have the coronavirus testing available, so they didn't test them. I'm not saying you're wrong in terms of the future, but a lot of the deaths that have occurred already will not be cataloged because there was no testing available for them.
I understand what you're saying, and I guess that makes sense. And where
You're right. Down the road, yeah, we're not. It's only going to go down in the future. But a lot of what's happened, we'll never know.
And where I want to take that though is the point I was making is like, if we tested that much for the flu, I bet the mortality rate for the flu would be even lower than it is now.
Probably. It's 2 per 100 million or 100,000.
Right. And if we had drive-in places you could go, I mean, how many people get the flu and don't get tested?
I'm pretty sure I had influenza B this year. So.
Right. And did you go get tested to get it confirmed?
No. So, I was sick. I stayed home. I got my shit together and I went back to work.
And that's what I think is important. Like, the naysayers are going to see that as we start doing more testing, the mortality rate's going to go down and they're going to use it for fuel for their fire. And I'm just pointing out that if we tested at the same level for corona as we did, if we would test the flu at the same level we're going to be testing for corona, I bet we'd find the flu mortality rate is much lower than it is too, or what they claim it to be too.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree.
That's all. And I haven't heard anyone say that.
Yep.
I'm turning my heater on. It's getting chilly. Sorry.
The heat is on.
It is on. I love the stuff on the recycling, and I love the idea about the collaboration and I think that's brilliant. That like that just makes sense. Like, why isn't
if they created the cycle, it would be a cycle. They would literally say, I'm bringing in this product, I'm going to make it into this. When it spits out the back end and the consumer has used it, it's going to be this, and it can be then taken in this way, processed, and I can accept it again.
And that's why I think they're talking about making a tax on the plastic.
Correct.
Like, because I mean,
they talk about that. It's the same thing as the soda taxes for sugar. It's kind of bogus because there's no real consequence.
Well, because there's not a sugar tax, or there's not the plastic tax.
But I'm saying you're right. They've done that in like New York and Chicago, and they're short-lived things because they don't produce the outcome people want. They don't curb usage of plastics or sugar. They don't encourage the recycling of plastics or the decrease of sugar usage. They just create an increased cost that makes people upset, and then it gets taken away because it's not supported. Politicians don't want to lose their office.
And yeah, right. And that's where they need to find a way that says we're locking your prices in and we're going to charge you more.
They as the government, and this is where you get away from capitalism into more socialism, where you want to act for the greater good and say that, okay, industry is allowed to innovate to whatever their heart's content. You can make any product you want out of any plastic you want. But in order to do so, you have to work with the whatever entity that can coordinate between manufacturers of plastic, recyclers of plastic, and manufacturers of products and say, look, here's going to be the life cycle of my product and guarantee that the minimal amount of waste will be created. Now, that also counts on the major societal input, right, from you and me, right? Somehow, some way, the government also has to work with us and tell us how they're going to, and that's just it. Consumers, if you make it easy on us, we'll do it. So if they made a way for us to just throw all the plastic and recycling into one bin, collect it, and then make the sorting process in a way that it just is not so cost intensive, then it would be something that's palatable, right? Governments could probably buy into something that where if they didn't have to incur a bunch of cost, and they could figure out some way for for private industry to process the good and make it worth their while, then you wouldn't have the problem that we have today. It's just no one solved that issue, and it's that coordination. If you found some way to say, okay, well, here's the family of plastics that are out there between the manufacturers of plastics products and recyclers of products. If you made them all say, here's the catalog of things we're going to produce, and it's uniform, then maybe you would stand a chance at creating that environment. And there'd have to be some penalty. Like I told you when we were offline, we weren't on this call, that in my experience in everything, whether it be your performance in your job, your performance in adhering to laws, whatever, if there's no consequence, you're not going to do it. If I don't get my license sticker, I'm going to get a ticket. So I'm going to get my license sticker. You know what I mean? If I don't recycle my stuff in the bins and I get a fine for not recycling because it costs more for the community, I'm going to take 2 seconds to recycle the crap. Like, I mean, I just don't understand why we don't build, like that's what Germany did. That's why they have almost 70% of their plastics being recycled.
That's good, man. That's good stuff.
Sorry, I kind of go off on tangents. I am passionate about this. I care about recycling. It upsets me when we don't recycle because it makes sense. It's so easy to recycle. It really is.
So I ended up off the deep end, right? Like we've talked. You know where I've gone. You know where this show's taking me.
Now we go into the black hole, folks.
It is. It's so dark. I'm so sorry.
And I apologize if there's any cutting out while I procure a charging device on my phone again.
You know, I'll start with kind of like where I started, and I was looking at like what we classify causes of climate change and stuff, and like I went everywhere, and we all pretty much agree, like EU, United States, we all agree it's like carbon dioxide, methane,
right,
nitrous oxide, and fluorinated gases.
Yep.
And the thing I thought was really interesting is that CO2 is responsible for 64% of the man-made global warming. And its concentration in the atmosphere is 40% higher than it was when industrialization began. And the other one I'll talk about a little bit today is methane. And I always heard methane is worse than carbon dioxide.
Right.
But methane is only responsible for 17% of man-made global warming. So those things will come back, and I think I just think that's interesting because I don't know. So the other thing I just wanted to throw out there is right now the United States is kind of under siege. Like truth in America is under siege. And,
definitely.
Yeah.
From all perspectives.
I found this great article from the Union of Concerned Scientists, Science for a Healthy Planet in a Safer World. And the title of the article, Science Denied Again. Interior Department adds inaccurate climate change info to reports. And it talks about, I mean, pretty much what the headline says. They're putting in BS global warming facts in our interior, like Department of Interior, and like this line I like. According to the emails obtained by Energy and Policy Institute under public records law, this Goklani repeatedly called for changes in reports from the Bureau of Reclamation, a federal agency assigned to manage water resources within the DOI, to emphasize a statistically unlikely outcome of climate models. And he also may suggest that increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was beneficial. Neither position is supported by the broad scientific consensus.
Jesus.
And this is what we have voted into office in America. Like, look, I understand if you don't want to believe something. I get it. But you can't force delusion on people. You can't. Like, there is truth out there. There is research out there that it's done. The overwhelming majority of scientists are on this. This is not this Earth is the center.
Not debatable.
Yes, and I understand. At one point in time, the majority of scientists thought the Earth was the center of the galaxy, of the universe.
They also thought it was flat.
Right, I get that. But people believing that CO2 in the air is beneficial, like that's That's not progressive.
Okay, so if you want to go down to like basic theory, yeah, a small amount of CO2 is critical because then what would plants use for photosynthesis? Okay, I'll see that argument. But us pumping it out through industry and through our everyday lives like we do is not what nature needs. It's not part of the we have created this environment in which we live through our progress. And it has been up to a large extent to this point in we have not thought about the consequences to anything in order to achieve that progress. We've always wanted more.
So, yes. And this led me to, because we had time. We kind of were dealing with Corona and everything. So on Earth Day, I got to watch that Michael Moore
Yep.
executive produced
Planet of the Humans.
Planet of the Humans. And dude, my heart was broken. I was scared. I was heartbroken. And I was scared.
And heartbroken.
And heartbroken. All those things at once. And so like I have to be honest, like I haven't had a chance to vet all this information. I have not. And this will be more of a review. And then in like an analysis. And I will be digging more into this. But so they open up this documentary by asking random people, how long do humans have? And it's amazing. Like the answers vary from 10 years to a million years to forever.
Yeah, right. We won't last a million years, I know that.
And the sun's got 4.5 billion. So like, I mean, it's just wild. Like, and then it's just neat. Like they really draw attention to a 1958 film where they were already talking about climate change. That was in 1958. And the first Earth Day wasn't until 1970.
Correct.
So, I mean, and I was reading about what it was like in that times, and they were talking about, we didn't have a plastic straws in the river problem. We had cars in the problem. Cars were in the rivers.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was just the rivers were so polluted they would actually burn. I mean, there's video of rivers just catching on fire from the pollution. And in some aspects, yes, things have gotten better, totally. But this documentary really took, I would say, a really hard look at what the green movement has become and its integrity. And I think it brought up some really good questions. He goes to this Vermont Solar Festival, and it's supposed to be, completely powered by solar. Well, it starts raining, and they have to bring in diesel generators, like to keep it going. And he makes some good points that me and you've discussed. Like one of the ones I thought was interesting is he just talks about the batteries in electric cars and how we have to mine the rare earth metals to get them.
Yep.
And I mean, and it's not just mining the rare earth minerals. It's the the machines that we're doing. All those run on diesel. There's not electric tractors out there yet.
Yep.
There's not.
That's correct.
And so, I mean, all that's leaving a footprint. And then when you plug your car in, you're pulling from a power grid that most likely draws off coal, natural gas, or,
Well, those two are the main providers. And that's just it. Like we've discussed, most of it offline, by the way,
right.
But most of these industries who claim to be clean or providing carbon neutral benefits, they're not. And it's more in my mind that's their goal, right? They want to achieve the ability to be carbon neutral in the sense that whatever they're taking, they're providing back, whether it be in form of credits, right? Not just legitimately not providing, not polluting, by the way, I'm sorry, but just buying credits to say, I'm going to pollute, but I'll find some way to buy my way into providing benefit to the environment through planting of trees or whatever the case may be. And you can argue that to the nth. I agree that it's not a one-for-one per se. But like you said, and we've discussed, it feels like the intermittent change, required. You have to do bad to do good almost, right? You got to be willing to slap those dirty, filthily produced rubber tires onto your Tesla in order to drive a car around that uses electricity that was produced most likely from natural gas or coal when you plugged it in to charge it.
And those batteries, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
I on that.
And I know that's just it. They're bad. You should go on about that. I have some other anecdotes about that, but please, what's up with the batteries? Like, why are they so bad for you?
They talk about what does it actually take to make a renewable resource. And they go over all the things they need. They need silicone, they need polymers, they need steel, they need cobalt, they need graphite, they need rare earth metals, coal, steel, nickel, salt, hexablade, copper, concrete, lithium, tin, cadmium. Like, we're not picking this stuff up off the ground. The mining process to get this stuff produces a radioactive slurry that we're just spreading across the desert in some places.
Yep.
I mean, there are costs to this stuff. And the desert is not some dumping ground for our need to sustain things.
And it's sort of like what we were talking about with consequences, right? The scope of perspective and that cost benefit analysis, right? When is that happening?
And they pose that question: do alternate fuels actually replace fossil fuels? And no, they don't. They
not right now. No.
Like, you can't do crap without fossil fuels right now.
Right now, it's because infrastructure is. Now, you're right. I believe infrastructure having been made to supply fossil fuels, it's sort of a natural progression. Like you really can't avoid. You can't just shut it off one day and flip it over. And that's only because of the way we've designed things so far. It's not because it's impossible or you couldn't do it. It's because we have, for whatever reason, decided that we're going to be willing to do bad, right? In order to support these fledgling, so far, things. Now, I think wind and solar, they, every year they make better improvements on efficiency and all that. But can they replace fossil fuels one for one? No, not even hydroelectric, which is, water being produced through dams. We can't control the weather. So even that's not completely something you can count on. You cannot scale power grids. I don't know if we talked about this before, but I know through my own research, you cannot scale power grids. I think you too looked into this. You can't just scale them like a battery, right? They have a capacity. They have to be provided at a constant rate. They have no good way to burn off any excess whatever. There's no way to just store it or whatever. So if they don't need it, they shut it down and they have to ramp it back up to get back to it.
And there's energy loss doing that. Just like when you start your car, it takes up
more. It's not 100% efficient. It doesn't all go to the grid.
Right, exactly. And that's like, we're not looking at this big enough. I got to keep going, otherwise we'll never make it through.
Yeah, sorry.
I'll jump to solar panels, and this is the one that really bothered me. Solar panels, I remember being like, oh, they're glass, it's sand. I remember hearing that.
Yeah, but you don't think about the photovoltaics involved.
And it's not sand, because the sand's not pure enough. So what they have to do is they have to mine quartz, and they have to use coal, and they smelt the quartz in the coal at temperatures over 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, which they have to use coal to do. And that turns it into a silica metal. And that's what they use to make the
photovoltaic cells.
Yeah. And the thing I thought was just really scary is, like, do you know who's making most of the money off of all the green subsidies right now? Koch brothers.
Shocker.
And they're the oil guys. They're supposed to be the bad guys. Why are they getting money? Well, it's because they own Guardian Glass, which makes the mirrors that they use in the solar arrays in California. It's because they own, what's the name of this one? I got it pulled up here. KKI, Coke Inc., which is structural concrete, which is used in building the wind turbines. It's used in and they also are the ones who smelt the quartz in the coal to make the silica glass made in the photovoltaic cells. In fact, they actually have their own solar company. Why are the Koch brothers investing in solar? Well, is it because it makes the world better? No,
It's the kindness of their heart, right?
dude. And you sent me pushback on this, which I was so happy you did. And I want to I'll finish with the pushback because there's great things in there. The thing that I was just like, they pointed out the hypocrisy and things, and I'll get there. They talked about Beyond Coal, which was Michael Bloomberg's big thing, and Beyond Coal just was a push to natural gas, which
right.
I get it, it's better, but natural gas requires fracking.
Yep.
It's like the modern day strip mining. It's not good. I mean, so we're patting ourselves on the back and we're still tearing up the earth. And the thing that
it's that incremental thing where we have to be willing to accept the bad with the good. And are you willing to just cut it off? Yeah, I'm with you.
I circled this 100 times and wrote this. They ask in the documentary, or they say, we aren't trying to save the planet. We're trying to save our way of life. And we need to be very clear about the difference because they are different. And the fact is, we live on a planet with finite resources, and we treat it like it's this infinite sponge that can collect our ever-expanding population.
Our need. Yep. Our need for growth.
Make sure I'm good with this page. They talked about how no one is really 100% renewable, and we kind of mentioned that, but they showed the Tesla gigawatt factory, which was supposed to be 100% sustainable. It's still hooked up to the power grid. It still has its own substation. They talked to Apple, which Apple claimed to be 100% renewable, and they showed that they still take power from the grid.
They have to. Because of that factor. They can't afford to ever go down. So they need to plug in because they can't count on the fact their renewables are foolproof.
Me and you have talked, and I think I'm going to save this one so we can do a whole show on about it, but they talk in the doc too about how we're running out of water. And I think that's something we really should do a full show on, because I think me and you both feel very strongly about that.
Water everywhere, huh?
Not a drop to drink. So that we'll save that. They do talk a lot about how deserts can't be sacrificed and how they've really been our dumping ground. They go back and show the solar arrays and stuff, and they're shattered mirrors all over the desert. I mean, they kill so many birds.
There's definitely a maintenance factor. Nothing comes for free, so you have to decide if you need that and you're going to hook it up to the grid. How do you guarantee you're never going to need the quote-unquote grid and can sustain yourself?
The biggest solar arrays, they focused all the mirrors at that
the tower, the heating tower.
Yeah, it's got the melted molten salt or something in there.
Yep.
And, I mean, the truth is, they got to start that thing up in the morning, and they do that with natural gas. They're still, it's still dependent on fossil fuels.
Right. They don't have the ability to capture enough power to create the heat for the heating cell to fire up in the morning. Yeah. They got to find ways. They have to plug these holes if they want to be totally renewable. No doubt about it. You cannot fudge your way into it.
They showed how population was pretty steady growth in America, in the world, until we got fossil fuels, and then it grew. I think it was 200 times or something. It was exponential growth once we got the fossil fuels, and they did a study where they found the human impact of the world, now, and they said it was 100 times greater impact on Earth than humans that were alive 200 years ago.
Wow.
I mean, from our phones to our cars to our everything that, all of that is a cost on the planet.
Every bit of it. And it's not everything. It's from the lug nuts. To create lug nuts in your car, you got to smelt metal. To the seat that's made of plastic polymers and fibers and wool and whatever else. You cannot get any product. I can look around my garage and almost everything has been made through something that's petroleum based.
What do you know about biomass fuel, Brent?
Yeah, like I told you when you asked me what biomass was. Biomass in and of itself is degradable, biometric. It's biological material.
Right. And I should say that biomass and biofuel get traded around a lot in this realm of conservation. And that's the other one that the doc does a really good job. I never really knew about biofuel, and I didn't know.
I didn't realize the extent to which they were using different kinds of biofuel in order to create, power for us. That's for sure.
And uh, here we go. Oh, take this. Um, oh, I really don't want biofuel. I want biomass. I was gonna give you the nice definition, biomass definition, because technically it's where's my Wikipedia? It is a plant or animal material used for energy production, electricity or heat, or in various industrial process as raw substance for a range of products.
Yep.
They say it can be purposely grown crops, like switchgrass, wood or forest residues, waste from food crops, horticultural, like yard waste, food processing, animal farming, rich manure, or
Yep.
human waste and sewage plants. So this is the part I think is interesting. Burning derived biomass releases CO2, but it has still been classified as a renewable energy source in the EU and the UN legal frameworks because photosynthesis cycles the CO2 back into new crops. In some cases, the recycling of CO2 from plants to atmosphere and back into plants can even be CO2 negative. I call bullshit.
Interesting.
I mean, what they're doing is there's. I feel like I've done a terrible job. Let me start. They are literally selling our forest in some instances. They are chopping down woods in Michigan to turn the wood into scraps that they then burn to turn into electricity. And they're saying that's better than coal because it doesn't release as much CO2.
Right. They're deciding to do bad. They're saying, hey, we're going to take the incremental gain rather than the 100% gain. And it's not that it's right. I agree.
It's not sustainable. Like,
No,
it's no way sustainable. And
there's not unlimited wood, by the way. I mean, that's what happened on Easter Island. They burned up all the damn trees and they ran out of fuel to cook food and they all rotted and died away.
yes.
Like you can kill yourself off as a civilization by overusing the resources. It's natural. That's what it happens.
Well, I found the study, or I found the number. It says if we were to burn every tree in the United States, it would give us enough electricity for 1 year.
Right, because the biggest producers of electricity are coal, natural gas, and nuclear.
And yeah,
Hydroelectric.
So just for fun, Middleburn University in Vermont had the first biomass plant. They used wood chips and stuff to help power the school. This one is interesting, though. There's one in Detroit. It's a Detroit incinerator that it burns the city's trash for biomass.
Yeah, I've heard of that before.
Who wants to breathe that in? Who thinks that's healthy?
If you could find some way to filter out whatever you're burning and capture that, I'd be all for it. But if you can't do that, then it doesn't work.
Well, they tested a school nearby because it had black residue inside of the building, and they found that it was mainly rubber because when they were burning the green wood, they needed to get it hotter, so they would use tire pieces of rubber to burn to get the fire hot enough.
Yep.
And in one instance, they were buying railroad ties from Canada, and they were treated in either PCP or kerosene, and they were just burning them literally within like 3 miles of this school. And they're not capturing, they're not taking any measures, and it's and the movie does this really good really good job of just pointing out, like, burning forest for energies will destroy one of our best defenses against climate change. Like,
Yep.
trees are one of our best things we have. And I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. They really hit hard on the Sierra Club and its founder, and they talked about how there was a profit motive that really has taken over the green movement in America and honestly the world. And it was the guy named Bill McKibben, and 60% 60% generated fuel comes from biomass. He was told about Germany, like of their Germany's renewable energy, 60% of that renewable energy is coming from biomass. So I mean, I don't think Germany gets just such a clear pass. And the interviewer goes, or the documentary guy goes, and he interviews this Bill McKibben. He interviews Van Jones, and these guys just seem clueless about what bioenergy is really doing. And I'm telling you though, like, it's not a good thing, and it's this, like, it's this idea that it sounds good, but like after Richard Branson flew a 747 from Hawaii to like mainland off of coconut oil, United Airlines dumped $30 million into a biofuel company that's essentially just a logging company. Like, they just cut down trees, and the idea is that we're gonna turn that into biofuel for airplanes.
Right.
What's scary?
Well, they want a good marketing, right, pitch. They want to seem like part of the solution.
It's scary because we're doing weird things. Like, the other things we're doing is like taking methane, like animal waste byproducts and stuff like that, that would release methane, and we're taking it and introducing these different enzymes and stuff to turn it into a fuel. But then we burn the fuel and it releases CO2. And that's why I don't understand the numbers. Are we saying because we turned the methane into CO2, it was better? Because I need to see the numbers for that to justify that. Because as of right now, methane doesn't seem to be the problem. It's CO2. Like, and we're turning methane things into more CO2.
Yep. Well, and that's just it. I don't think it's a very clear picture that's painted for any of it. You know, it's almost like it's by design that it's not easy to uncover what's really going on with this. There's not a one-for-one trade.
So the other ones they're doing is they're making fuels out of rendered animal fats. I'm not going to go really down this road, but look up a rendered animal fat.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It's hideous. It's basically those YouTube videos where you see people drop like random things into those grinders that grind everything up. They're dropping whole cows and horses into that to render their fat to turn it into fuel.
Yep.
Like, again, we're calling that renewable or sustainable.
Well, I don't think there's any thought of renewable or sustainable there. It's just a matter of I need this.
It's deemed though. I mean, that's still what we're classifying it as. And what I love the thing in the video, they point out about GE had all these big plans to do a seaweed, big seaweed push to make a biofuel with seaweed. And they showed all this video of a seaweed farm, I think is what they called it. And it wasn't a year after they filmed that climate change had killed that entire seaweed farm.
Yeah.
The waters got hotter, I'm assuming. And again, Koch brothers are likely the largest recipients of biomass fuel subsidies in the United States. Like, we're doing.
You don't get rich for free.
I know we're doing something wrong. Carbon isn't killing the planet. We are. Like, and that's what we need to accept. It's us. And
we create the carbon.
They end the documentary with this really good quote from Rachel Carson, who has this book called, where is it? Well, apparently I didn't save it. I'll put it in the links. It'll be in the links below. Or I'll try to be fancy and make it pop up. But Rachel Carson had this quote in 1962: "Humankind is challenged, as it has never been challenged before, to prove its maturity, its mastery, not of nature, but of itself." And I don't think we've mastered ourselves. I think the
No,
hard fact we need
not
to
as a
talk about,
society.
I think we need to start talking about population walls. We
Well,
can't.
or what are we willing to sustain? What's a good level of sustaining life? You know what I mean?
Here's what's going to happen. We're going to populate to a number where we're forced to make sacrifices, or we make some sacrifices now and maintain the lifestyles we have. I mean, and even that's not true. Even that's not true, because we're not on a level. We don't have a population level right now that's sustainable.
Yep.
We don't. And I hate to be bleak, but one of the professors or whatever they're interviewing in the film, the documentary says, what's one question no one ever asked you? And he goes, no one ever asked me if I'm scared. He goes, I am. I lose sleep over this at night.
Yeah.
And I talked to this guy up in Missoula, Montana, and he's like a ecologist up there or something, and he says, I've looked at this, and I've always thought, well, we'll just step up, we'll go to that next level, we'll make it bigger, we'll do this with it. And he's like, the waters, the rivers of America are irrigated about to the level they can handle it. We can't diverge and spread them any further. And the biggest issue that I think me and you addressed in our farce of solar and wind is that we don't have storage capacity.
Correct. We have no way to keep what we get.
Yes, we don't have enough battery storage right now to store 1 day of power for the United
To offset the loss too.
Right.
You
pushed back. That's pretty much my review of the movie. I really recommend it. It's on YouTube, Planet of the Humans. I'm gonna do more research on this because Brent,
me too.
Really good pushbacks, and I've been looking into them. But some of the ones that you sent me in the text are just funny because those are things we already knew were not true after doing the farce of Solar and Wind show. I pulled up Vox's website, and Vox says the film, directed by Jeff Gibbs, a longtime Michael Moore collaborator, is not the climate message we've all been waiting for. It's a nihilistic take riddled with errors about clean energy and climate activism with very little evidence. It claims that renewables are disastrous and that environmental groups are corrupt. I think they gave really good evidence on how McKibben has lost his way. I think they gave very good evidence of how McKibben, the head of the Sierra Club, has honestly lost his way. I can't phrase it any different. If you can watch it and you can figure out a way that he's still in the right of this, I would love to hear it because I don't see it.
Sure.
When he's asked about it, he doesn't have good answers. It's not logical. It is not logical that we make a new fuel source that is less sustainable than something we already had. And biomass is that. Biofuel is that. I don't want to chop down every forest we have to turn it into more carbon. That's asinine to me. The other claims, they say, what is more, it has nothing to say about the fossil fuel corporations who have pushed climate denial and blocked progress on climate policy for decades. Given the film's loose relationship to facts, I'm not even sure it should be classified as a documentary. I don't know what Vox has at stake here. I don't know. When I read Vox's review, it makes me think they have money or something at stake. But Vox literally offers no evidence to their rebuttal. Zero. They say that he used, he says that he used bad, he says he used outdated information.
Right.
And The film's wind and solar facts are old. It quotes efficiency for solar PV from more than a decade ago. And it doesn't mention the fact that solar costs have plummeted since then, and that we've learned to get more wind and solar onto the grid. Yeah, we've learned to get more wind and solar onto the grid at the cost of opening way more natural gas plants.
And we can't store it. So that's just it. We can do better and more of it, but we can't store it. We just haven't solved the fundamental issue.
It says when Gibbs questions environmental activists about biomass, they tell him it's complicated because, well, it is. When we burn wood for electricity, or we are using carbon that is already moving between our air, oceans, and land. By contrast, when we dig up and burn fossil fuels, we're burning carbon up from underground. That makes no sense. Those trees aren't all going to get burned. They all are going to get turned into carbon.
No.
Just like the coal wasn't going to get turned into this carbon in our air.
Not necessarily. No, it was doing just fine in the ground.
They said, that said, biomass can be, and often is, done poorly with significant environmental harms. So they don't like the way he said it, but they agree with him?
Yeah. Well, that's just it. Like we talked before, there's no saints in any of this that are trying to do right. Like all these people, there's dirty connections. There's things that are messed up with the industry, and a lot of it's outright fraud in terms of them lying in order to say that it's good for us when it's not. I think that those that find some way to make, in my opinion, again, incremental change for the better, accepting some bad with the fact that you will get more good, I think that is something you're not going to be able to totally avoid unless you come to some agreement as a society or as a government that's going to force it on a society that says, look, on this date, we're cutting off fossil fuels and we're going to all renewable, and that's all there is to it. When you don't have power at midnight because we don't have the storage capacity, then too bad. Or when you're going to have power all night at midnight and whenever, because we're going to store it and we're going to have it available. We'll figure out a way to make it happen. Like it's going to have to be one extreme or the other, or we make incremental change at the detriment to all of us.
I think it's really sad. He says this undermines these activists' achievements by sowing confusion and doubt. Like, he doesn't say anything bad about Greta. He doesn't say anything about this, I don't know her name, Varshini Prakash?
I don't know.
I don't know her. Like, I'm really bothered by the pushback to it. I really don't understand it. I think he brings great points. He talks about how we're having these Earth Day celebrations that are being sponsored by corporate sponsors who are some of the biggest polluters.
Yep.
Are we just giving them a pass? And I don't know.
We are, definitely.
I hope maybe next week you can have it. If you have the chance to watch it, maybe we can do your take on it. Because I feel like he put things out there in a way that wasn't like, I pay attention to color commentary, and he didn't give me color commentary. He gave me facts, and the facts speak for themselves. And I want to see someone dispute the numbers about the biomass. I want to see someone tell me that it's wrong. If we burned all the trees in America, we'd not have enough wood for electricity for a year or something. I mean, yeah. What am I missing? And the other big thing is they say it instead the film degenerates the crucial work of the Sierras Club Beyond Coal campaign, which was led to help to stop the construction of 200 coal plants and successfully pushed for the retirement of 300. But they all opened natural gas. So they said,
right. They didn't bring them the conversation, though. It was just about coal, right?
Well, they say rather than recognize the Sierras Club's achievement, the filmmakers falsely attribute the growth in natural gas to Beyond Coal. Well, so did Beyond Coal help shut the coal factories or not? Because when they shut the coal factories, guess what? They still needed electricity.
Yeah.
So what did Beyond Coal do?
It's almost, honestly, if they had the right motivations, it's unforeseen consequences. They just weren't smart enough to figure out how to defeat them.
And they don't. It just. I don't know. They say, why is Michael Moore promoting misinformation on climate change? It's difficult to understand. Motivations on blaming clean energy and environmental groups instead of fossil fuel companies. They did pull out the fossil fuel companies. They took aim at GE. They did. And they did just talk about how the Sierra Club is partnering up to logging industries. Like,
Yep.
Again, if someone can explain it to me, I'm down. I was really moved by it. They said, unfortunately, many people are taking the film seriously. It got 4 out of 5 stars from The Guardian. Normally a paragon of climate reporting, and the Late Show with Stephen Colbert gave more precious airtime to promote it on Earth Day. I would have rather seen Colbert interview a young climate activist. She would have known more about the subject. The guy making this film has been a climate activist his whole life, and they want to listen to a 17-year-old girl. This is what's wrong with Vox. This is why the right rips the Democrats to shreds. We count a 17-year-old girl as an expert because we like the way she says it better than a guy who's making us take a harder look at it. Like, the Democrats are just soft on so many damn levels. It makes me annoyed. Like,
the left, maybe a better way to put it.
That's fine. And the left is Vox, and the Vox needs to grow a pair. And I don't understand. Maybe they just want to hug trees that they're burning and getting energy.
Could be.
The dumbest line I've ever read was they are trying to justify, well, it's carbon that was above ground anyways. No, it wasn't. That carbon should have went back into the ground where the trees.
No, it should have stayed in the ground. We shouldn't even dug it up.
Right, because, are they going to put all those nutrients back into the ground where they took it out of? Because that's what the tree was going to do. It was going to put its nutrients back into the soil. And we've read documentaries and other things, watched documentaries, TED Talks, about how trees are all interconnected. And they get the nutrients through the root systems into the ground and stuff. To call this sustainable seems like a far cry. I was really disappointed. I had my heart broken. I feel like it's a scary world. And I think the realization I'm finding is we have to accept the world has finite resources, and we have to accept its limitations, and we have to accept what we're willing to do about it. Because the truth of the matter is, it's population caps or
we find true sustainability.
And that's what I'm afraid of, dude. I don't want that to be the mindset that, like, we can't wait. Like,
no, we can't. We truly can't. But I mean, it's like you and I were talking. I don't want to totally get on a tangent on it, but at the end of the day, there will be a time of reckoning where there will be just like when the stock market resets, there may be a population or a societal reset.
Yeah.
That has to happen. We'll see.
Hopefully we get some people in charge that I just want to see them take it serious.
I agree.
Let me know, everybody, what you think. Thanks for watching.
Yeah. Please let us know. Comments. Do you like this conversation? Do you want us to keep going with it? Or is it just a bunch of hullabaloo and you're like, yeah, let's move on to something else, guys?
I'm sorry I got so off topic, guys. I know we had a fan request. I took it the wrong way. I apologize. It's for the reason.
I don't think it was the wrong way. I bet David would think you did him proud.
Well, David, it was because of you that this show happened, and I'm sorry if the research took me in a strange way, but thank you for recommending.
We thank you for the suggestion.
And we ask other viewers to give us suggestions. It was a lot of fun.
So, all right. Well, thank you, buddy. Appreciate all the time. We'll sign off, folks, and thanks as usual.
Get some sleep, man.
All right. Take care.
I'll see you. Have a good night. Have a good